Now recently I was lucky enough to win the 2025 Golden Reel here at Larford Lakes on the Spessy Lake. Now, all this video is going to be about how I went about it. As you can see, we're latched into one of the Spessy Lakes carp right now. So I'm going to try and get him in, and then we're going to run through how I went about everything on the day. Rigs, tactics, feedings and thought plan to catch these massive carp which live in this lake and help me win the title. Large. So there you go, a couple of simple tactics you can catch fish like these. So let's get stuck into how we're going about catching a great fish like this. Now we're going to move on to the kit and tackle I use for the final. Now here at Larford it's a bit unique fishing. The big fish, and we're fishing in deep water from depths say 8 to 12 foot. So you're going to need specialist sort of tackle to deal with these fish because they're ranging from 4 to up to 20 odd pounds. So you need to be set up to make sure everything you hook, you don't lose, you can land, be nice and balanced. So first of all, the elastic I've chosen to use for this, and I've been using it up and down the country all summer for my long pole deck fishing, is a 15 hollow elastic. I like it because it's not too harsh, but it's got a bit of beef. When the fish is under my top kit, I can net it with ease, just makes it a little bit easier. But it's nice and stretchy, so when I hook them on the strike, I can set the hook, but fish can glide out the peg, and I'm not bottoming the elastic out and running the chance of pulling my hook. So I'm going to be using a long kit today just because I got that little bit extra length of elastic, and you might see I've got a little bit of elastic dangling at the end of my pole. That's probably about 10 inches worth. Now this just gives me a little guide. If the fish is running into the middle of the lake and it's going to bottom me out, I'll see this come into my bead, so it just gives me a chance to try and get my pole a little bit high and try and turn that fish. So it just gives me a little head start if my elastic's going to get bottomed out. Now main line, nice and robust and strong for this sort of fishing. It's 021 power line. Now you heard me mentioning, I was speaking about, I'm going to be fishing between 8 to 12 foot deep around this lake, depending where you are. Today it's probably like 9.5 foot. So I've opted for a big float because it's a big lake and the wind can affect it with tow and movement, and you want to keep the rig still as possible. So I've got a power float, nice ruby style bulbous body, nice thick tip on it, and it's a 1.25, just because we're fishing in 9 foot. Now if it's a little bit windier today, we've got nice conditions, but if it's a little bit windier, and actually on the final I did use a 1.5 just because I wanted that stability that was there. So just a nice power float there, a wire stem to keep everything stable, and then because I'm using over a gram, I'm going to have to use an Olivet just so I've got not loads of shot down my line, just keeps it nice and neat. So I've just got a 0.8 Olivet there, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got 7 number 8s on there as well. So it just gives me a chance if I want to move my bulk a little bit higher, I can do. But I've just got it 6 inches apart from my first shot that's above my hook length, 6 inches again, and then 6 inches to my Olivet. Now if I felt like the water was a little bit clearer, I could have moved it up, but for the purpose of what we did in the final, this is how I shot with my finger, bulk and two with an Olivet. And then literally sitting down to a KKH pre-tied, just 017 and a 16. This is a nice, like, heavier style hook. So when I'm fishing with 8mm, or I come on to the minute, I actually used an XSH in a size 12 and a 017 as well. So I've got 2 hook lengths which are chopped and changed. I had 2 rigs set up in the day just with different hook lengths. So that one's a KKH with a 017 and a size 16 from a back pellet fishing. And then it brings us onto the bait. So that hook which I used is just a pre-tied XSHB 12, size 12 to 017. Now this is because 1 kilo hook bait in that final was putting 1 or 2 worms on the hook. So putting 1 or 2 worms on the hook over my pellets mid-match just really helped just to single out them big fish. Seeing from that fish at the start of the video how big they can be. Now what I think the thing was, when the fish are feeding early, they're grubbing round, pellets can be really good. Just feeding some fishery 6mm, just shy my pole tip. If I can need to, I'll go on about how I've thought about fishing in my feed and off my feed as well, but fishery 6mm was a feed. And then for hook bait wise, we've got a few worms in there, 2 of them on a, 1 or 2 of them on a hook, and then I've just got some pale 8mm and some 6mm. Now, depending on how the fishing's going, was my thought process for what sort of bait to put on. So 8mm are going to be the starting hook bait, and then as I've put more and more bait on the bottom and probably less and less fish feeding in my peg, I need a little bit more standout hook bait. So then 1 or 2 worms, just a nice big hook bait, visible for them carp on the bottom. That's what's probably got me over the line and that killer edge. So that's what I always think in your fishing. You want a little edge in your fishing. You want to think about how the fish are feeding. So instead of just flogging it away on 8mm, you tried just double worm, and that was an absolute game changer. But like I said before, it's important to have a different hook on. Just a nice big size 12, get 2 worms on, 1 or 2 worms on there, dead easy, dead effective. And I'll show you how to hook them when we put them on in a bit. But for now, I'm going to slip an 8mm back on, get back out there and show you how about I went in the final trying to catch these carp. Right, so I'm just going to show you how I go about trying to catch these big carp in deep water, because it is quite unique fishing, and if you haven't done it before, it could probably be a bit daunting. So I've just got my 8mm on there, my nice bulking tune, nice heavy rig. Now, obviously the wind's just died down now, which is perfect for this sort of scenario. Now you might notice I've actually got a bump bar on at the front. Now that's not normally used for carp fishing, but because I'm on a big lake and I want to keep my bait so still over my pile of loose feed of pellets, it's really important for this style of fishing. So what I'm going to be doing is when I go out to my mark, I'm going to get to my butt section, line up with my marker, flip my rig past, and then I'm just going to put my pole on the bump section. And I'm probably going to lift it like 2 or 3 foot off the air. As soon as I see everything straight, I'm just going to lower it down and get it in position. This is because I just want everything nice in a tight pile and a tight little mark. Oh, little skimmer bite then. The last thing I want to do is flick it all over the place and start my rig dragging through. This is why I like having a heavier rig than you think you need. It's just so important. And then when my rig's in position, I'll just keep it in between my legs and the little support, and I'll loose feed. Now what I want to try and do is try and not feed loads past my pole tip. I don't mind the odd pellet going past, but the reason why I'm using support bar is if I need to, if I feed a little bit shorter, I can take my pole out my pole support, put it on my knees and fish that way. So I can either fish in my feed or just on the back of it. Now, you know how deadly sometimes it is fishing on the back of your feed on a barm, or fishing for silverfish, and carp are exactly the same. Just fishing on the back of your feed, if them fish are coming out from the lake, the first bait they come to is yours, and just give you the better chances of trying to hook these fish. Now one thing that's noticeable that happened in the final as well, is when there's a carp in your peg, they sort of like tell you. You get a few signs, a few movements, a few slow line bites, and then all of a sudden they find your hook bait and it wallops under. So it's just about being really patient and keeping it still. Now in the final, if it was up to like half an hour, I'd be sat in my bump bar like this, waiting for a bite, because the big fish, ideally they average from £10 to £15 average, with the odd smaller one, the odd obviously monster that's over £20, but they're the sort of fish you're fishing for, and the last thing you want to do is sort of like striking all the time, laying your rigging all the time, because if one of them fish comes in and you lay it over the back, you're going to foul hook it, and the last thing you want to do is foul hook a big fish in these sort of depths. So keeping everything nice and tight, nice and direct, and just being really, really patient is like key to this fishing. But also, it's, especially if things in the final, it's like your hook bait's massive, what sort of hook bait you put on, whether you put an 8mm pellet on, a 6mm pellet on, 1 or 2 worms, just depending on the situation. If I feel like I start feeding more and more and there's an odd fish coming in, but I'm missing a few bites, and if I start to foul hook an odd fish, I will just change, just put a nice big visible hook bait on and see if that makes a little bit of a difference. I just always think these carp in this lake are used to like big volumes of bait and grazing over it. Carp fished a lot in the summer months. So just feel like that's a little edge you can have if you just get a nice big hook bait. Sometimes you'll sit there now and just get no sign, no indication it'll wallop under, but normally you get a few indications to let you know one's about. See, that's a little sign there. Now it might be like an odd little skimmer bite. But because I'm feeding fishery 6mm, I'm not really targeting the skimmers. If I was looking to do that, I'd probably maybe fish some 4mm or a bit of meat or something like that. But because I'm trying to fish for solely carp, I feel like it's important to just be nice and patient. Now, when I've plumbed this up, I've actually plumbed about 2 or 3 inches over depth, just so if the rig does move with the toe and stuff, it's still pinned to the bottom nice and accurately. The way I want to try and think about it is like I'm fishing with a bomb, say, but on the pole, so I just want to keep everything nice and anchored, and obviously when the fish picks up my hook bait, I'll see it obviously a lot quicker, and it's a little bit better presentation than the bomb. So, but this has come to like up and down the country now, a little sign then. Fishing on the bottom with pellets in this sort of depth of water is a bit unheard of a few years ago, and all of a sudden it's just rows everywhere, especially like here, Hayfield Lakes, stuff like that, places I've fished up and down the country. I've done a lot of this sort of fishing now, fishing with pellets on the bottom. And one thing I noticed is just about being patient and obviously having the right hook bait on. Like I said before, you got to imagine them fish swimming around, them big fish are just, might take them 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes to come back into your peg, but once they do, start trying to find your bait, start trying to eat it. It's not fast, frantic fishing, it's just about being nice and patient. I think on the final I had like 14 carp, so over 5 hours, that's only 3 an hour nearly. Obviously did foul hook and lose a couple, but when you think you've got 20 minutes to catch a carp, it's next to nothing compared to like F1 sort of fishing and Snake Lake fishing. A little skimmer bite there. So what I'll do, I'll lay it back in now and I'll feed again. Just make sure I'm right on position and then pellets. The wind's swirling around all over the place now. So once it's in position, often you can find as well, once you feed some bait over the top of your float, you can get a quick sign indication of that bit of noise going in. You can just draw a fish in. That's why I think it's important. It's not about just feeding 10 pellets twice and just sitting there and waiting. Sometimes you have got to feed a little bit of bait just to draw them fish in. And one thing I wouldn't be scared of is when I did fish the final, is like I probably went a bit too negative when I started loose feeding at the start, so I probably fed like 5 to 10 pellets twice, just tried to feel my way in, and as soon as I started to up my feeds, I feed like 15 to 20 pellets twice, make that crashing sound, just feel like it drawed them fish and pinned them on the bottom. What you got to remember is they are big fish, so there you go, there's one now. They are, oh, let's come off that one. They are big fish. Ooh, took it off the wrong bit. I was saying, they are big fish, so the last thing you want to do is sort of like lift and drop and feed all the time. You want to give them a chance to come in and start eating. So we'll have a little go on that pellet again. If we do get that again, I will look to change it just to show you. And try and nail one of these big carp in this lake. Now the distance wise I chose to fish is 14 metres. I feel like that just gives me the best chance of trying to catch enough fish. I feel like 13's a little bit too close, and 16 metres just makes everything a little bit too much hard work. So 14 metres with a bump, with a square butt rest, just to keep everything steady. But like you noticed there, loose fed some pellets and instantly had a fish come in the peg. So it's just about going through that little process again, just being nice and patient. You might get a few line bites of a few skimmers puckling at your pellet, or a carp in your peg. Skimmery bite. Just trying to about ignore them and just make sure you wait for that positive indication. See, for me now, if I was probably F1 fishing, I'd probably look to feed again. But because obviously we are fishing for big carp, nice and patient, positive fishing. I'm just going to sit there and let it all develop, just trying to wait for one to come back in. That's why I think as well, in the sort of hook bait fishing is really important. So like when the fish are grubbing around and they're eating, I feel like pellets are really good, just because they're picking them up, they want to eat them dead quick. But when the fish come in, as like 2 or 3 fish come in your peg, sometimes just having that big standout hook bait just helps. Just create a bite a little bit quicker than it would with a pellet sort of thing. And one thing I did notice on the final is when I had my pellet fish, they were a lot bigger than when I caught them on worms. But that's the thing, if you've got some smaller fish, say like 5, 6, 7, 8 pounders whizzing around your peg, they're going to give you a few more signs than them big old chaps, like 15 pluses. That's where I just think they just sneak in and just eat your bait. So there's a little bit of a wind on now and it's not moving my rig, that's what I want. Got it nicely in position on my bump bar. My rig's nice and heavy, so I've just sat there in position. So if a fish comes in, it's gonna... There you go, that was a solid bite, that one. There you go. Ooh. That's the thing, don't be scared to give it a little big strike as well when you do up one, because you gotta try and set that hook in that depth of water. But this is where the fun happens now, because you try and cling on to him. Now one thing I will say is, when you are carp fishing, if you are fishing like these places, is to double ship. This just allows, if this fish runs off, I can literally put my sections on. But because of the depth, I'm not going to play it on a top 4. I'm still going to play it on my top kit. But little trick I like to use, have a little bit longer landing net handle, keep everything dead low. So I've probably got like 2 or 3 foot of elastic out there, and then I just like to glide them up. And normally you can try and get them first go. If they go back down, just take your time. You don't want to do anything, don't want to be jagging your top kit round and round with these sort of fish. Just want to keep everything nice and slow. And if them big fish, they just follow you in. That there. So you just keep it nice and tidy. Just take your time as well. Don't be lifting your landing net up now, because obviously it can create a snap because they are big fish. Just pull it down, grab it on the blocker. Now these ones here were like the sort of stamp I had middle of the match. These were like the ones actually caught on worms. It's like 7, 8 pounders, lovely little commons. And I feel like these are the grubbers. And these are the ones that caused you that little bite before, which is actually the fish are hooked, because I do feel like them big ones, they just eat your bait. But with these ones, try and hold him up, lovely little 7, 8 pounder, immaculate common. And they're the ones which were like the bread and butter in the middle of my match. They're the ones that got me just ticking over the middle of the match. don't get me wrong, everyone wants to catch some big fish, but it's important to just keep ticking over. And I felt when I've caught them fish, I was on the right stamp of fish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change my hook, put 2 worms on, show you how you try and catch a little bit bigger fish, or see if we can get a little bit more positive bite on that. But that's a simple process that won me that £30,000 on that golden reel, which is dead simple approach, but there's a few key things you need to get right, because your chances are so limited with these fish. You're not trying to catch hundreds of fish where you can afford to have a missed cast or a missed feed. With these, it's all about just taking your time, making sure everything's right, and it just puts all the odds in your favour that way. So I'm going to get my hook changed over, whack 2 worms on, and I'll be back in a minute. Right, I'm just going to whack 2 worms on, so I'm just going to put one through the head and the other one straight for the head. I'm not going to nip them off or anything like that. Now, one thing, you see them worms now, they want to spin up and try and tangle your rig up. So all I'd say is, because you can't slap them over because obviously the depth of your rig, you just pinch them at the top and just pull them lengthways. Pull them down towards the tail, so it just stretches them out. So it creates them nice and still. It sort of like stuns them sort of thing. So you can imagine that on the bottom now will look ever so inviting for a nice big carp. So same process applies, just literally take your time in shipping them out. Make sure you got in line with your mark, in line with your flat butt, flick it past, lift him up, get on that bump bar, keep everything straight, drop him in. Ever so simple fishing, but like every fishing, there's always a few things which you need to do to try and put everything in your favour. So try and not feed too many past my pole. Just gives me the chance of dropping on my pole if I need to. Say if a lot more fish started to feed, or the conditions allowed me to just put the pole in between on my legs, then I feel like it'd be a little bit quicker if I could say I was catching the odd skimmer, the odd smaller carp as well, then I'd probably fish it in my hands. But because we're fishing for so little fish, this just makes it nice and simple, nice easy way of attacking your peg. But like you'll notice from the last clip, it's strange how you do get some signs, indications, and then all of a sudden it just buries under. That last bite was a lovely little sharp fly under. And you wouldn't think it because of the depth of the water, but that's why it's about being positive with number 8 shot, your Olivet, just a bulk and 2 droppers. Just a nice heavy hook bait. And you'd be surprised what sort of bites you can get in these deep water. I think people are afraid to fish it, but if the depth's there and the fish want to feed in the bottom, then it's some devastating tactic. It's just, like I said, it's come about up and down the country the past few years. It's been a killer way of catching them, but don't get me wrong, it's not always going to be the case of that's the best hook bait, this is the best hook bait. I feel like it can change throughout the day. Say if the fish did start grubbing around and started eating 6mm and started tuning into them, then a little pale 6mm or a red one on the bottom would probably outscore an 8mm or a worm. But vice versa, an 8mm can be better, a worm could be better. It's just depending on the day and what fish you got in your peg. Now normally the fish tell you, if you're obviously getting quick reactions and quick bites off a certain hook bait, that's the best one for the time. But just about being patient, like I say, it's not fast, frantic fishing. Can't get my words out today. Just about being patient. It's ever so fun when you do whack into him. Obviously we've changed the hook over now. Got that 12 XSH on. 017 still, so nice and strong. Now on the day I did pick up a few little skimmers on this as well, so which turned out crucial because I only won by like £2 or £3. I think I had £2 or £3 of skimmers, so they're not to be sniffed at if they're in your peg. And sometimes, like in this game, if there's no carp in your peg, it's just about putting fish in the net. But I felt on the day I was in the right area for carp, just because there was a few fish topping, a few fish lingering. Lads either side of me were catching a few fish, and I feel like that's important. If people around you aren't catching them and you don't feel like they're in the area, then you might have to put a few skimmers in the net. But on the day, I felt like I drew smack on where I needed to be, which is the main thing in match fishing. If you need to draw in the right area, but just make sure you get your tactics right as well. So yeah, indication there then. You just imagine them pellets all on the bottom and then just two random worms sat there. Fish just come in and just be attracted to it. You'd never even think that they'd be able to catch them like that, but that's one thing I will say. Yeah, that was a bite then. That was like a lift bite sort of thing, but this might be the thing, like, might catch them. I'm going to call them stockies because they are for the Larford Special Lake, but them smaller stocky carp, they're just in and around your peg. Now they can give you signs, indications which could cause you to foul hook them if you were fishing pellets. So like I said before, they might be better with a 6mm or yeah, they're a bit small, this one. Doesn't feel heavy, but might fool me. So even though it's like a week or two after the final, the fishing's still sort of similar. You still get a few line bites just before you hook one. Obviously the hook bait, 8mm, can catch a really big fish, and then your worms is going to catch you a little smaller fish. Say small, they're a lovely sized carp. They'll probably be like 10 and 15 pound in no time. It's an F1, I think. Might be wrong. No carp. Shouldn't guess. It's an F1. As you're talking about carp, we caught an F1. Well, yeah, the two worms there. You wouldn't think a fish of that size would eat them two worms you've seen dangling down there. But it just shows you, if them fish are in your peg, you'd probably be less likely to eat an 8mm over them. But it's come in, picked them up, being dead greedy. So just try and have one more, see if we can get another one. But like I say, it's exactly the same as it was on the day, really. Actually, I'm not sat on the same peg I was in the final, just because there's a few pleasure anglers down to the left where we actually was, so I didn't get here in time to get on that peg. But we're just on the end of the shallow bank on the ramp. The actual peg I drew in the final was the one before the tree, and that was the best little area. I think Jimmy Brooks next to me, he had 144 or 145. Jamie Hughes was third off this peg with 130 odd. So this is a little area for carp, and on the day the wind was like exactly opposite it was today, so it was like missing our peg, so it was a little bit warmer, and I think that's where just the carp felt a little bit safer. But same again, just dead simple approach. Flick it past, drop him in my bump bar, line him up with my marker. Now one thing I look for is when the float wobbles around and then all of a sudden it'll just go dead straight and tight. That's when I know everything's in line. Then drop it down, go for my catty. Be quite aggressive in my feeding. 20 pellets twice, and just sit and wait. But even though it was a smaller fish, it still proves that like the target hook bait. Now if I started to hook them a little bit more regular in odd fish, but what I'd maybe look to do was put the pole on my knee with maybe a 6mm just to see. But with these sort of big open style water lakes, it's scary to think that timing's everything. Sometimes, I think at 2.5 hours into the match, I actually chucked a little banjo feeder into the middle of the lake just because there's a few fish topping and no one caught on the pole. And then what happened then was I seen Jimmy hook one next to me, I seen Craig Edmonds hook one next to me. They both lost it, but he just said to me that the fish had come back in on that pole line, drifted, cut back in. As the match got later, obviously the fish are renowned for coming into the margins on this lake, so they swim out into the middle of the lake, then come back. So I've dropped them a pole, and that was the best run I had. I had like 3 big fish for £40. Just same again, just had 1 on the pellet and 2 on worms. Just sitting there being nice and patient, but that's the thing, it just gets you over the line, fishing like that. Making sure you have the 3 fish on that line. But just reading the lake, that was one of the importance, not just rushing and making silly decisions of just because you think. I always think with carp fishing, when I let them tell you what's going on. Like I could easily sit there for 20-30 minutes without lifting this rig back out now and feeding odd time over the top. Just because I know if a fish comes in, I just don't want to miss that chance. Now I didn't get a chance to practice it before the fishing, but before the final, literally because I qualified for semi-final a week before, so I never had a chance the week before the final to get up because of the Fish North final. So literally just come with my guns, and I've had fished this lake last year before, this sort of style of fishing, and I sort of like knew what I needed to do. So that's the beauty of this sort of fishing, whether it's like here at Larford, Hayfield, different lakes. If your lake's sort of like 8 to 10 foot deep on the long pole and you've got some carp in there, just have a little go on the bottom, because you'd be surprised what you can actually catch on there. So just try and catch 1 more. But hopefully I just demonstrated, shows you the rigs you need, shows you a little process behind it, how it actually won me the Golden Reel 2025, because it's a bit surreal, because I never even thought when I drew my peg, obviously driving down from when I drew, that I was going to have a chance of winning, and then all of a sudden I've got to the peg and there's an odd carp topping along the stretch where we were, and I just thought, it looks a bit cooler here, it looks a bit warmer here than the other side, and just the fish seem to be lingering there. And like you say, Larford, you just don't know, because the fish are so big, you don't need many fish. It's not like a fish race where there's a certain area and all the fish have gone to the windward end and that's it. The big fish, you could easily have that final, say I won with 147, you could easily have 7 or 8 fish for that. If you get the right stamp, so you never know where it's going to be won from, and that's what you want with the final, just a bit of, not predictable, just to turn up anywhere and just surprises. Obviously, it all makes sense after the weigh-in and stuff where the fish have been, but before the start, well, that was a bite, flicked him over. I'm not scared to give it a big whack, just because I want to try and set that hook in that depth of water. But like I was saying, it is predictable when obviously the final weigh-in's been done, but when you're fishing the match, you're never too sure. A bit wayward, that one. Never too sure where the fish are going to be until they start getting caught. So you just had a sign then. Whether it was one of them little carp whizzing through or a big one, give me a sign. Just try and pull it in position. That's it. A couple of signs there then. So it's always so evident is when you feed, you get a little sign. Just a fish coming back into the peg, rubbing round. So it's just about being patient now, trying to catch one. Don't get me wrong, if I like 4 or 5, 6 minutes pass and I feel like I need to feed again, I will, but just want to give them a chance now. It might be a few skimmers plucking it with worms or a few smaller fish, but be surprised. Just give them a chance to find your hook bait. And that's the one beauty of it, just be nice and patient. That's why it's a bit unique sitting in a bump bar fishing for carp, but I just feel like it slows you down. You don't want to pick your catapult all the time. You just go for a little nice rhythm of it. And it is a dead fun. an effective way of fishing when you're sat there and just waiting for it to whack under, and then you whack it and your pole hoops over and your elastic comes out and you've got a nice carp on the end. Right, there we go. So that is that it. Proper nailed that one. But just had a few signs before that, so it's a bit typical of what's gone on. And as the session's going on, it's just apparent it's just exactly the same sort of, like, as the bait builds up on the bottom, just need a bit more of a standout hook bait. Ooh, fish is running. This is where it gives you the advantage now, just having that little bit of elastic outside your pole, just because that fish is running then. I've seen the elastic going in a little bit. It just allows me to get back out there, follow it back out. If I need to, I can keep going, but it's the thing, it's sort of like a battle to try and get them in. And one thing you don't want to do with them is rush, because they take so long to catch. And you put all your efforts into catching them, and then the last thing you want to do is just literally try and rush them in the net. Just take your time, get back to your top kit. Now if you can, just try and get back to your top kit straight away, because it's the strongest part of your pole. Now the thing that I've liked to use on this as well is a short number 3. Just gives me a little bit more strength than a long number 3. This style of fishing just allows me to have that little bit of more confidence with my pole. Don't get me wrong, a normal number 3 would be fine, but I just like the extra confidence. If I don't need the length, I don't use a number 3. I just don't like to use short number 3s, just because they're nice and stiff and just gives me that extra added strength. It's a proper nod of this one. Save it. A little trick of trying to pull him up is not going to work now, so I'm just going to take my time. So I don't want to pull him off or make him angry, so he just bottoms me out in the middle of the lake. Confident in my setup. That's the biggest thing with this carp fishing. All I gotta do is just take my time. I feel like repeating myself, just saying about being patient and being nice and steady away today, but they're so big, and like they're so hard to catch as well. The last thing you want to do is give him the chance to get away. Wants to run, I'll let him run. That's the beauty of having extra sections. A bit premature with that landing net, I think. The beauty of extra sections behind me. If that fish wanted to run then, I could easily get my pole together. If you've got the whole 40 metres together behind you, just makes it a little bit harder. Proper shaking his head there. This is when it gets exciting now. See it pop up, a nice big carp. So people are often scared to try and catch these fish in deep water, but it's probably one of the most exciting and enjoyable ways of fishing when you do catch them. What you'll find, because they're so big, they'll have like a little charge. Just want to make sure your elastic and your puller kit's not tangled up, so if it does run, you can just literally let him go. Keep everything low. Normally you'll see, I've seen my float there, but looking for my Olivet sort of, because I know that's going to be a foot away from where the fish is. So I can see my Olivet, I can lift my top kit then. That's the little rule I say to myself. I don't want to try and pull him up, because the last thing I'm going to do, if this is £15 plus, I'm not going to be able to do that. Even with the £10 plus, you're not going to be able to do it. So just keep everything nice and low. Lift him up. That's the proper one, that one. Oh, there we go. So there you go. Nice big one to end on. The proper fish, that one. Yeah, so a nice big one to end on. Try and unhook him. Just pull that there. So a massive mouth on it. 2 worms dangling in the top lip. As you can imagine, that's just coming, hunting for them pellets. out of the way. I'll try and hold him up. Come in, just hunting for them pellets. I can see it's a right whopper. So get your tactics right, get in that deep water, and you can catch fish like this that won me 30 grand in the Golden Reel final here at Larford. What a special place and what a fantastic event. So I'm going to slip him back, and hopefully you've learned a few things about how to attack these carp in deep water and a little insight of how I went about in the final.